it's a horror film. It's got, you know, unless it's horrible, you know, you've not done your job. I swear by this press kit.
Do you know who's in there? Because I fucking don't.
There's a straight-to-video pitch for Kill List, which is Hitmen versus Satanists. That's the trapped in an elevator with a studio executive. You know, that's not really what the film is. I think it's, I don't know, socio-realist horror film, but I don't think that'll get many people to go to the cinema to see it, you know. It's not bad if you don't understand it, it's not a problem. I watch many films I don't understand the first time, and that, yeah, I mean, all the films of David Lynch, for instance, you know, and as he gets older, they get harder to understand, or Tarkovsky or something like that. You know, I'm not drawing comparisons, obviously, but
oh, you are close from Lynch.
But I don't think that's necessarily a criticism of a film, that it's harder to understand, and you'd like, you know, and obviously the film, you can't understand Kill List until you've seen the whole film. You might not understand it as you're watching it, but by the end of it, you get more of an idea of what has happened. And if you know, there's lots of ways through the film, and maybe you took a different way through it, that it was an emotional journey rather than looking at the clues for the absolute understanding of the nuts and bolts of what it meant. But, you know, that's fine. You might go back and revisit it, have to watch it again, or you might just remember what happened in it, or you might be really lazy and just look it up on the internet, which is perfectly fine. The main, if we're talking about films that inspired it, the main one is Race with the Devil, the Warren Oates 1970s horror film, where he goes on holiday with his friend and they see devil worshipping, and then they get chased across America in their camper van, and then they think they've gotten away, and then there's a big ring of fire goes around their camper van and they get caught. And that I saw that when I was a kid, and it really scared me. Obviously there's elements of Wicker Man in Kill List, but I think the main thing that we took from that film was this idea of being in a trap. You know, the ending is already preordained from the start. The rest of it, I think, is a bit more, you know, people have drawn comparisons for the cults and stuff, but I just don't. I think it's so vague. I don't think it's, you know, the Wicker Man has its own particular kind of politics in the way that it works. It doesn't really tie in if you look at it. Other filmmakers that we thought about were like Alan Clark and John Cassavetes, and before we shot the film, we watched Grey Gardens, the Maisels documentary, and Battle for Algiers as well. So it's kind of a bit more eclectic than just straight up horror stuff. You know, if you can break any movie down into these genre elements, they're all you know, there's only about 5 or 6 different stories or types of story that you can use. Kill List was particular because it had come from a casting point of view first, and I'd wanted to work with the people from the start, and it was seeing how they fitted together. So you've got like Neil Maskell and Michael Smiley, and I thought, oh, they'd be good together. Who would they be if they were? How could they, you know, how would they interact with each other? And then this idea of them being ex-soldiers came about, and then I wanted to work with Mianna and Emma. I thought, oh, Neil and Mianna would make a good couple, and, you know, starting to build the building blocks like that, which is a very different way than the movies are usually done, which obviously the story's written, and then you look at the characters and you think, who could we get, who could perform these things, and who's available. But this was done the other way around, or it was written specifically for the actors. Without the internet, I wouldn't be here, you know, and the main thing with that is that I made a lot of short films before the internet, and I'd show them at tiny festival or screenings of cinema clubs in pubs in London, and 40 people would see these films, and then no one else would ever see them again, and you'd just go home with them and put them in a drawer. But once the internet came along, you make stuff, put it online, and then, you know, literally millions of people would see it. And then I got offered work doing TV and ads and stuff. So, you know, that's what's amazing about the internet. It democratizes filmmaking and allows you distribution in a way that you would never have, you know, up until that point. Advertising is really useful for that idea of compressing ideas into very small amounts of space, so you're concise with your storytelling and you don't just, and it just doesn't splurge out. So when you've got that moment where you have to tell something quite quick, you can tell it fast. And if you've had enough experience of doing it, you know that there's strategies for telling very quick stories when you don't have a lot of time. Online stuff is different because it's the viral stuff. Kind of, it was very interesting and useful because it stood or fell on how realistic it was. Because what we used to do, and it's before all the kind of, obviously it's after Blair Witch, but it's before all this found footage stuff, was we used to make ads which would pretend to be found footage clips on YouTube with camcorders going, oh, look, it's someone doing an amazing stunt, oh, you know, and they'd fall over or roll down a hill and land on their head or whatever, you know. And people would watch them and think they were real, you know, and then go, oh my God, and they'd send it on to their friends, and then suddenly these things would get millions and millions of hits. And that kind of taught me a couple of bits, what we were saying before about the Hammer stuff of, no, we weren't talking about that before, were we? But anyway, the violence in the film in Kill List was kind of, that idea of not cutting was really important, that it felt like it was found footage rather than it was, because I think that's where the movie kind of breaks at that point. You're watching it and going, oh yeah, it's cutting, it's fine. But then when he has the moment with the librarian, you kind of go, oh, he'll cut away now, there'll be an edit here, but then there isn't, and that's really, and I think that's what's shocking about it. And that shot is really taken from working online and having to do with all these kind of fake camcorder. That psychological violence is sometimes more violent and affecting than physical violence, you know. And if you have a ground bed of psychological violence, then the physical violence, when it comes, can be quite sparing. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be too much to be really effective. And I think that when you see violence in the cinema, if you have you could have something really gory, like a kind of Saw type film or whatever, but if you go from a wide and then someone goes, and then it cuts into a big close up into the head, I mean, it's really horrible looking, but you know it's not real, because it can't be real, because there's a cut in it. It moves through time and space to do that. And also, you know all about special effects, you've heard all about that stuff. But and that's the language of cinema, is editing, close-ups, you know, tension built through close-ups and sound. But if you use the language of YouTube or the language of like execution footage or news footage, which tends to be quite far away and it doesn't look that dramatic, but the violence is, you know, is real and you feel it is real, is much more chilling and horrible than any amount of violent cinema you could ever watch, you know. So I think the more you hold it back, the more impact it has in a way. We built a lot of like low level kind of bass sound that would kind of move backwards and forwards through the audience. And basically what that does is you don't necessarily hear it, but you can feel it, and you feel it in your kind of kidneys and your lungs and everything, and it makes you feel really unhappy, just generally, you know. And if it was just, if it was just in the dark with no pictures, you'd feel quite unhappy about it. So that was one of the strategies, that when things got heavier, then these noises would come in, and these low level kind of hums. And in the tunnel stuff, we found this sound which was, you know, like whale song, when whales sing to each other underwater. We found the shark equivalent of that, so singing underwater shark noises, which we put underneath all that, and it's a horrible sound, and you don't, you know, if you hear, and I think it talks to like right inside your kind of reptile brain from when you were a monkey or something, and you were seeing, or a seal or something swimming in the sea, and you don't, once you hear that noise, you know you're fucked, so we put that underneath, but it's deep underneath the sound mix. So I storyboarded the tunnel stuff a bit, because the tunnel was really small, you know, it was a set, and it was only as long as this room. So it had to be planned, otherwise you'd notice that they just run around the same corner again and again and again. So that was planned, but then on that one, we only shot that for a day, that sequence. So I shot it until lunchtime, and then I went, while everyone ate, I went up and edited it, and then re-storyboarded it at lunchtime, went back in the afternoon, and then we shot it slightly differently than I had planned, because once I could see it cut, I knew that I'd missed some shots out. And I think we might have gone back and at the end of the shoot and shot some people's feet or some bits, little detail-y bits. just to pick up, because you know you want to get the actors. You don't necessarily have time to shoot the bits where they're holding their guns and things like that, because it. But the rest of the film was really much done, and in a way it has to be, because it's all locations and it's done fast. I mean, it's only a 3-week shoot, so it's all done on it's all done on the hoof and kind of made up on the spot. But the only reason I could do that is because previously I'd done a lot of TV, which was, you know, like that, and you go in and block it and do it really quick. But you know, and in a way it's kind of, you know, storyboarding isn't the be all and end all of everything, and in a way it's kind of, sometimes it's quite restricting, because you kind of, you know, it's like it's all over. You do the storyboards, and if then you shoot the boards, you kind of, there's a certain lack of energy, I think, in things. And what I tend to do is storyboard and then not look at them, because I'd storyboard the whole film maybe, and then never look at that again. And then on the morning I'd go through what I had to shoot that day, and I'd shot list it, or maybe do like plan view stuff and go, well, this is what the set looks like. The actors will be here, and the camera might be here, and something. And then I don't look at that again either. And on set I make it up. But what that gives you is this. You've at least gone through the discipline of imagining it the first time round and the second time round, and then when you come to it the third time, hopefully you've caught any of the problems that would have been, and then you can allow the actors to be free and kind of do what they want and do and live in the roles, rather than worrying about having to walk over to, you know, I want you to go over and then move over here and do this, and they hate that, you know, because it totally it breaks their kind of freedom to express what the characters would do, or be humans basically. Because you can get this kind of quite stylised feeling from if you overthink where you want the camera, you know.